September 20th, 1953. Kimpo Air Base, South Korea. American servicemen are eating lunch when air raid sirens start, screaming across the runway. A MiG-15 fighter jet is diving straight toward them at 400 km. Ground crews scatter. Gunners scramble to their positions. This is it. The communists are attacking. But then something strange happens. The MiG doesn't strafe. It doesn't fire. It just lands. The canopy pops open and out climbs a 21-year-old North Korean pilot in full uniform, hands raised, surrendering. His name's No Kim Suk, and he just gave the United States the most valuable gift of the Cold War. He didn't just escape, he brought them the enemy's most advanced weapon. But here's what makes this insane. No, Kumuk had no idea. The Americans were offering him the iron to any pilot who defected with a MiG. He didn't see the leaflets they dropped over North Korea, promising riches and freedom. He just wanted out, and in doing so, he pulled off one of the most audacious defections in modern history, changed the course of aerial warfare, and erased his own identity forever. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what the MiG-15 meant in 1953. The Korean War has been raging for 3 years. American F-86 Sabres are getting shredded in the skies over what pilots call MiG Alley. The Soviet-built MiG-15 is faster, climbs higher, and hits harder than anything the West has. American pilots are dying, and they have no idea why. The MiG is a mystery, wrapped in Cold War secrecy. U.S. intelligence is desperate, absolutely desperate to get their hands on one. They need to understand how it flies, how it fights, how to beat it. But every MiG that crashes in combat is either obliterated on impact or recovered by communist forces before American teams can reach it. So, in April 1993, the CIA launches Operation Moolah. They print millions of leaflets in Korean and Chinese, promising 50,000 to any pilot who defects with a MiG-15. That's $500,000 in today's money. The leaflets are stuffed into artillery shells and dropped over North Korean air bases. Bombers scatter them across the Yalu River. Radio broadcasts beam the offer into communist airspace 24 hours a day. The message is clear. Bring us a MiG and you'll be rich beyond your wildest dreams. The only problem, almost, no one sees them. North Korean pilots are kept under constant surveillance, reading enemy propaganda as a death sentence. And even if you wanted to defect, how would you pull it off without your wingman shooting you down? This is when No Kumak enters the picture. Born in 1922 in the port city of Sinuiju, right on the border with China, his father is a wealthy businessman who supports Korean independence from Japan. When World War II ends and Korea splits in two, the family stays in the north. Big mistake. Kim Il-sung's communists take power, and wealthy landowners are the first targets. One night in 1947, No's father simply disappears. No secret, police arrest, no trial, he just vanishes. No is 15 years old. Years later, No will learn his father was likely executed and buried in an unmarked grave for the crime of being successful before the revolution. No's mother tells him to keep his head down, stay quiet, and survive. So that's exactly what he does. He becomes the perfect communist. He joins the youth league. He memorizes Marxist theory. He volunteers for extra shifts at the collective farm. He smiles at propaganda rallies. Inside, he's seething with rage. But outside, model citizen, perfect student, loyal to the party. When the Korean War breaks out in 1915, No sees his chance. The regime needs pilots desperately. Fighter training means education, prestige, and most importantly, access to aircraft. He applies to the North Korean Air Force Academy and aces every exam. At 18 years old, No Kumok enters flight school. The instructors are Soviet officers who speak through translators and treat their Korean students like expendable pawns. The training is brutal. Cadets who wash out are sent to frontline infantry units. Basically a death sentence. No watches friends die in training, accidents. He watches others get shot for minor infractions. But he keeps his mouth shut, and his scores high. By 1952, he's flying the MiG-15, the most advanced fighter jet on Earth. The Soviets guard its secrets, obsessively. Even North Korean pilots aren't told how the engines work or what makes the aircraft so deadly. They're just taught to fly, fight, and follow orders. And here's the thing, No is good, really good. He becomes one of the top cadets in his class. His instructors praise him. His commanders trust him. He flies combat missions over South Korea, engaging American F-26As and dog fights at 14,000 FT. He never shoots anyone down, but he also never gets shot down. He's careful, disciplined, calculating, and the whole time he's planning his escape. But Escaping North Korea isn't like hopping a border fence. The DMZ is the most militarized strip of land on the planet. Every road is guarded. Every citizen is watched. And for a pilot, it's even worse. You fly in formations. Your fuel is rationed to the exact amount needed for the mission. Your flight path is monitored from the ground. One deviation and your wingmen have orders to shoot you down. So, no waits. He watches. He learns the patterns. By September 1993, the war is technically over. An armistice was signed in July, but the tension is still nuclear. Both sides are on hair trigger alert. Noah is stationed at Sununan Air Base near Pyongyang. One morning, he's assigned to a routine training flight. Nothing unusual, just him and a dozen other pilots practicing formation flying. This is the moment, because Noah has realized something crucial. During training flights, they fly in loose formations at low altitude. No radar tracking, no ground coordination, just pilots flying patterns near the coast. If he breaks formation and dives for the deck, he'll have maybe 2 minutes before anyone reacts. 2 minutes to cross the DMZ, dodge anti-aircraft fire, and reach South Korea before his squadron realizes he's gone. September 20th, 1953, 10 a.m. Namkamsa climbs into his MiG-15. He goes through the pre-flight checklist like always. Engines start. Instruments check. Radio check. His heart is hammering so hard he's sure the ground crew can hear it, but his hands are steady. He takes off with the formation, climbing to 5,000 FT. There, flying a standard patrol pattern along the coast. Noah is in the middle of the formation, perfectly positioned. He waits for the right moment. Then, without warning, he banks hard left and shoves the throttle to full power. The MiG screams as it accelerates past 500 mph. No, drops to 50 feet above the rice paddies, skimming the treetops, using the terrain to mask his radar signature. Behind him, his squadron is shouting on the radio, "No, what are you doing? Return to formation." He yanks out his radio headset and tosses it aside. No going back now. The DMZ appears on the horizon. No can see the barbed wire, the minefields, the guard towers. Anti-aircraft batteries open fire. Tracers streak past his canopy. A burst. A flak rattles his fuselage. He's flying so low that he can see North Korean soldiers on the ground staring up in disbelief. Then he crosses the line. 1 second, he's in North Korea. The next he's in South Korea. He's done it. He's out. But now comes the hard part. Landing without getting shot down by the Americans. Because from their perspective, a North Korean MiG just violated their airspace at combat speed. This is either a defection or a suicide attack, and they have about 10 seconds to figure out which. Kimpo Air Base erupts into chaos. Klaxons are blaring. Pilots are sprinting to their F-18C says. Ground crews are diving into bunkers. No. Drops his landing gear and flaps, bleeding off. Speed as fast as he can. He's trying to signal, "I'm surrendering," but he has no radio, no white flag, nothing. He just has to hope they don't blow him out of the sky. He lines up with the runway and brings the MiG down hard. The tires screech. He slams on the brakes. The jet skids to a stop in a cloud of burning rubber. American soldiers are surrounding him with rifles raised. No. Pops the canopy, climbs out slowly, and raises his hands above his head. He doesn't speak English, so he just smiles, the biggest, most nervous smile of his life. For about 30 seconds, nobody moves. Then an intelligence officer runs up, realizes what's happening, and starts shouting, "Don't shoot. Don't shoot. He's defecting." The soldiers lower their weapons. Someone else brings a translator. And that's when No learns about Operation Mua. That's when they tell him about the dollars and reward. His jaw literally drops. He had no idea. None. He risked his life, abandoned his family, and condemned himself to permanent exile for reasons that had nothing to do with money. But the Americans don't care why he did it. They just care that he brought them the MiG within hours. The MiG-15 is surrounded by engineers, test pilots, and intelligence officers. They're crawling all over it, like kids on Christmas morning. For 3 years, this aircraft has been a ghost. Now it's sitting on an American runway, intact and operational. They measure every rivet, they photograph every panel, they pull the engine and tear it apart piece by piece. What they discover changes everything. The MiG's engine is a modified British design, one that the British sold to the Soviets before the war. The Americans had no idea. The airframe is lighter than expected, which explains its climb rate. The gun placement is awkward, which explains why MiG pilots struggle in close combat. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every design flaw, it's all laid bare. But the real prize is the test flights. American pilots take the MiG up and fly it against F-26 Sabres in mock combat. They learn its stall characteristics, its roll rate, its blind spots. They develop new tactics, specifically designed to exploit the MiG's weaknesses within months. The data is distributed to every fighter squadron in the U.S. Air Force. American pilots start winning dogfights they would have lost before the kill ratio shifts. The MiG-15 is still dangerous, but it's no longer invincible. And it all started because one 22-year-old North Korean decided he'd rather die free than live under Kim Il-sung. The MiG itself becomes a propaganda bonanza. The Air Force parades it across the United States. It goes on display at air shows. Newsreel cameras film it from every angle. The Soviets are furious. They accuse the U.S. of stealing the aircraft. They demand its return. The U.S. responds by saying, "Come and get it." The MiG eventually ends up at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, where it sits today, still in its original North Korea markings. You can walk right up and touch it. It's just sitting there like a museum piece. But for the men who fought in MiG Alley, that aircraft represents thousands of lives saved. As for No Kamok, his life gets complicated fast. The U.S. awards him the $1,000 promised. That's life-changing money in 1953. But there's a catch. He can never go home. His mother is still in North Korea, and the regime knows exactly what he did. Defectors. Families are sent to labor camps as punishment. No will later learn that his mother was interrogated for months, her property seized, her reputation destroyed. She spent the rest of her life under constant surveillance, branded as the mother of a traitor. No, we'll never see her again. He carries that guilt for the rest of his life. The Americans give him a new identity. He becomes Kenneth Rowe. They enroll him at the University of Delaware, where he studies mechanical engineering. He keeps his head down, blends in, tries to build a normal life, but he's not normal. He's a walking Cold War artifact. The CIA keeps tabs on him. So does the KGB. There are credible threats on his life from North Korean agents. He moves frequently, changes his routine, never tells anyone his real story. For years, he lives in this weird limbo. Free, but not really free. Safe, but not really safe. He excels academically, uses his reward, money to pay for school and then some, gets his bachelor's degree, then a master's from MIT. He becomes an aeronautical engineer, which is darkly ironic. He spent his youth learning to fly Soviet aircraft, and now he's designing American ones. He eventually becomes a professor teaching engineering at universities for over 30 years. His students have no idea who he really is. To them, he's just Professor Rowe, a quiet guy with a thick accent who's really good at thermodynamics, but never forgets where he came from. In 1996, more than 40 years after his defection, he finally tells his story publicly. He writes a memoir called A MiG-15 to Freedom. In it, he describes the decision to defect not as a moment of courage, but as a moment of desperation. He wasn't trying to be a hero, he was just trying to survive. He writes about the guilt of abandoning his mother. He writes about the nightmares that haunted him for decades, dreams of being shot down, of being dragged back to North Korea, of watching his family tortured because of his choice.